Hey everybody, it's Chris from Family Geekery. And before we get into this very special episode, I wanted to set the scene a little bit for you. Because after we recorded it, I realized that we have a bunch of new voices on here that you have not met yet. So this episode is going to have basically my entire family. Of course, you've heard from Amber and Danielle and myself, but you'll also get to hear from my wife Alicia, which you probably heard in episode 104 when we talked about Venom. And you're also going to hear some new voices like my sister Pam and her husband Steve, and then my mother and father who introduce themselves as Mary Jane and Larry. So now that we have those introductions out of the way, let's get right into episode 150 of the Family Geekery podcast. Welcome to episode 150 of the Family Geekery podcast. I'm Chris.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Danny.
And we have some other special guests. Who else do we have?
Your mother,
Alicia.
I knew that was going to happen. Everybody at the same time.
One at a time.
Let's go youngest to oldest.
Alicia.
Pam.
Stephen.
Mary Jane,
And Larry.
All right, we got the whole family here for this special 150th episode of the podcast. And we brought the whole family here today because we're going to be talking about Disney memories and Disney stories. Now, as a geeky podcast, we spend a lot of time talking about comic books and video games and stuff like that. But we are also big-time Disney geeks. And I think even some of us fall into the category of Disney adults. And sometimes that's used as a bad descriptor. I take it as a description of pride. So we're going to be talking about Disney. And normally we would start off the podcast by talking about our geeky weeks, but that would just take way too long. And we want to dedicate all this time to these fantastic stories of all the years that we've been visiting Disney. So we're going to skip geeky weeks. That sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about my million movies next week. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we've had a couple weeks off because we've been preparing this, and it takes a little bit of logistics to get everybody together. But we're glad to get everybody in one virtual room here, recording from miles and miles apart from each other. And I think we're ready to go. All right, so what I thought I'd do is we'd start with maybe some of the oldest stories first. And if we're starting with the oldest stories, it's going to be ones that even I think predate my recollection or my memories or my existence, maybe even. So there's a particular story that I will give the title to of almost closing down Disney before it opened. Do you know what that might be?
I'm afraid I do.
Okay, can you paint the picture of what this story is and how it went down?
Well, early on, we were living in Clearwater, and my sister, your aunt, lived in Orlando. And we were told we could meet at the Disney campground and have a picnic. And so we all met there. At that time, the park had not been open very long. I really don't remember what year this was, but it was at the very beginning. And you could drive in. I can't remember whether we drove all the way down to the lake, but if we didn't, you could drive in and then you could get their transportation and get to the lake. So we took all our picnic gear and set up a picnic there by the lake, and the kids played in the sand by the lake, and everybody was having a good time. My brother-in-law, the engineer, started the little grill that he had brought for the charcoal or hamburgers or hot dogs, and brushed all the pine needles away to make it a safe, nice spot, unbeknownst to me. A little while later, the smoke got so bad from this little grill, it was blowing at me. And I thought, well, the easiest thing to do was move the grill, not move me. So I moved the grill, and of course I moved it where the pine needles were, and the pine needles caught on fire. And so the kids had, I think, some little buckets that they were playing in the sand, and we got a little relay going with water from the lake and put the fire out.
Do you remember that?
But the next thing we knew Disney no longer allowed you to enter any part of Disney, especially the campground, without going through all kinds of logistics. And when we were there just recently, there was no way to get to the campground unless you were actually planning to stay there. So I have to take the blame for almost closing down Disney before it opens. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So would this be the shores of Bay Lake there where the ferry now takes off from?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so they used to have a whole beach area and a roped off swimming area, and that water, that cesspool of a water, you could swim out there. Before they even had river country, they had a big open swimming hole area. And I think maybe even like a T-dock or something that went out to it, but no more open flames in public areas of the Disney property anymore. Thanks to us.
Yes. No flames at all.
Now, you guys weren't escorted out for that incident, were you? Or were we kicked out?
No, I don't think really any personnel knew what was going on because we got the fire put out pretty quickly. But my brother-in-law didn't speak to me for several years after that.
So,
more importantly, what happened to the food?
So I'm going to segue from that story to a story where we did actually get kicked out of the campground, or highly suggested that we evacuate the campground. Dad, you want to take that one over?
Yes. Back in the time, we did a lot of camping with what we call pop-ups. Pop-ups, in case you don't know, it's about a trailer that's about 4 foot off the ground. Once you get to the campground, you crank the roof up so that it's about 6 feet inside to stand in it. And then you had to pull out the beds on each end of this and put clamps under it to hold it up. So it's quite a bit of work to set up one of these things. Well, we came back from a movie, came to the campground. There was a sign on our car saying, "Hurricane coming. You have to get out of here."
At the exact time.
Yeah, by 2:00 we had to be out.
AM.
And as I said, there's a lot of work to putting one up. Well, there's a lot of work to putting one of these campers down. You have to, it was raining too, because the hurricane was coming. So we had to crank this thing down, and as you crank it down, you have to get the sides inside the camper, which is made of canvas and screening. So it's a meticulous working. You don't want to do it in a hurry, and you don't want to do it when it's wet, but we had to do both.
Plus, we had 2 children sleeping in the kitchen.
Yeah, we had to get them out.
I just woke up.
No, as I remember, they went right into the car and went to sleep. So we got the thing all cranked down, got it hitched up to the car, kids inside, and we took off. And if I remember, that was about 2:00 by then. 2 in the morning.
The time of
2 a.m.
to rain was exactly when Disney said it would rain.
Yeah.
And I think we were the last ones to evacuate the campground.
Yeah, everybody else had left, but we came back from the movie late. But that was very exciting. We've had a lot of pop-ups since then that we've taken there. A lot of tent camping and a motorhome at the very end. It's always been a nice place to camp. Never forget it.
And it's always cheaper to camp there when it's hurricane season.
Well, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Did you not know that a hurricane was coming? Because we now know a hurricane is coming like a week ahead of time.
Yeah.
We didn't. I don't think
we just knew maybe some bad weather coming. That might, have some rain.
It may have been a storm that came up very quickly.
Yeah.
I wonder about that now, too, that you asked the question.
Yeah.
But no, the first...
Why would we have even gone if we knew there was a hurricane?
If I today had planned a trip to go to Disney and then they said there's going to be a hurricane there at the same time, I would still go to Disney. So there's a big chance that he did know.
Hey, Disney was just so much fun. Much fun to camp there.
We grew up in Florida, like hurricanes were a normal thing. That's like saying,
right,
it's gonna rain. Okay, we're just gonna go anyways. It'll blow over. All right. The next story may be just as old as this. This is a story I'm gonna bring up here, called "Learning Just How Disney Can Be." So, I would, going to Disney would be something that we do as a family, but it's also something you do with friends for their birthdays or something. And I had what I might refer to as the rich friend. And the rich friend would go to Disney on his birthday, and he'd be able to bring a friend. So we went over to his house. It was his birthday weekend, so I brought him a present. We loaded up in there. I forget, they had some kind of a Jeep or something, some kind of a SUV. And we're driving over to Orlando. He opens up the present, which was the Men at Work's first album. So what was Men at Work's first album? What was that one called, Pam?
Cargo?
No, the one just before that.
Oh, I don't know.
Anyways, 1981 is when it came out. And that's what he wanted for his birthday, so that's what I got him for his birthday. And we had a record. Looking back now, not the smartest thing to give to someone traveling off on a destination trip, but we got to Disney and we stayed at checked in at the Contemporary. And this kid's mother was checking in at the Contemporary and said, "My son got a record for his birthday and he'd like to listen to it. Is there any way we can get a phonograph in the room?" So we get our keys, go up to whatever floor it was of the Contemporary, walk inside, and they had already delivered a phonograph into the room to play this kid's record.
Wow.
So that kind of blew my mind. Imagine making that request today. Like, we need to play an 8-track. Is there any way you can get an 8-track player up into our room, please?
Wow.
The album was called Business as Usual.
Business as Usual, that's right.
Well, that was Disney's Business as Usual.
Yeah. I could see like a cassette player or something, but the record player, that kind of blew my mind.
But they had record players way back then.
Well, yeah,
no, but they were big.
They weren't super portable.
They had portables.
All right, Pam, you got any stories? Just throw you right under the bus.
Under the bus, yeah.
You didn't prepare for this?
Well, I have many stories. Do you want one from what time in my life?
Just any.
Okay, well, probably the funniest story that I have about Disney is when I was dating Steve, who is now my husband. He would fly in from other countries because he was from Australia, and he would fly in and we would meet and go somewhere, and then we would eventually come back to Tallahassee. So this time I decided that it would be really cool if we went to the campground and camped with my parents. So he flew in from, was it
London?
London. And to Orlando. I picked him up at the airport. I put on the greatest hits of Sade, to
Very specific.
get us in the mood or whatever.
Very romantic.
Yeah, yes. And I'm driving I don't know what car it was, but I shouldn't have been driving it, and I didn't know where I was going. So we finally get to the campground, to Disney, and I'm like, okay, we have this next thing, this whole romantic thing that I have planned, before I tell him, of course, that we're staying with my parents. And that is, we went to Port Orleans, the Hotel Port Orleans, and they had a really nice restaurant that had jambalaya, and we loved jambalaya.
I don't think that exists anymore.
No, it does not exist anymore. So we went and had jambalaya, and it was all very romantic. And then we went back to the campground to stay in a pop-up with my parents.
You told me at dinner that you were staying with your parents.
Yes. I mean, I did finally tell him we were staying with my parents. Why this is a funny story, you're asking, is because Steve had planned to propose to me, and he did not want to propose to me in front of my parents
Yeah.
in a camper at Disney.
And just imagine if you said no. That would have been very.
Very embarrassing.
So he had this whole thing planned. He had a poem written, and he had a gift to give me, and all of that had to stay in the car because he was like, I'm not going to propose to her here. So we stayed at Disney for days with my parents, and he was sitting there going, I'd like to propose. I'd like to propose. I'd like to propose.
I was reevaluating.
Yeah, he was everything. I have a feeling. So that's one of my favorite stories, because it would have been great to, because I love Disney so much, it would have been great to have been proposed to at Disney, but not in a camper with my.
You have to ask Disney permission now to propose on their property.
Is that
That is true. Well,
What?
certain
That's
places,
true?
like if you want to do it in front of the castle, you have to have that prearranged.
Oh, I didn't know.
But in a pop-up
What are they gonna
camper
do?
in the middle of the woods,
Yeah.
I think they'll let that one slide.
Yeah,
Now,
so romantic.
would that have been 1994?
5.
5.
It's like February. We were trying
Oh, I
to
thought
this morning.
that wasn't the trip that I met you guys.
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no.
So when was it that he did finally propose? And
That's a whole nother story that has nothing.
Nothing to do with Disney.
we'll talk.
So
we'll talk tomorrow.
We drove home. We drove home to Tallahassee, and he proposed in Tallahassee.
Okay. All right.
Woohoo.
Yeah, we're again, not really sure that the camper wouldn't have been better, but yes. Looking back, it would have been really cool if he had done it in the restaurant, but alas.
That's 30 years ago. Get over it.
It's never
Women never forget, Steve.
never too late to try again.
No. Yeah, so we're coming up to our 30th wedding anniversary, and if we do renew our vows, which I'm not sure I would, but if we do, just kidding. He better propose to me better than that. So that's my favorite story of like a little bit later in my life. But can I tell another story or
Sure,
no?
go for it.
Okay, so my favorite story is when I was a kid, was when we were staying at the treehouse villas, not the treehouse villas that exist now, but the old ones. And I was reading the Stephen King novel Cujo, as a person of the age of 12 does. And so I'm reading this book, and I cannot find a light switch. And I don't know what to do. So I call and say, is there a way that how do I turn on this lamp, whatever it happens to be? Well, what happened is that, of course, somebody from Disney came. Instead of telling me where the light switch was, they came, showed me, turned on the light switch, and then handed me a Mickey Mouse statue for my trouble. So, because my fat butt could not find the light switch, they gave me a little statue of Disney, and I think that is one of the most Disney things.
Yeah.
Just like your record player, that is so Disney.
Well,
You were babysitting Chris? Or
No, I was not. I was
supervising Chris,
alone.
or you
I
were
was alone in the room reading Cujo.
in the
As you
dark.
do. Yeah, in the dark. Well, yes, in the dark, because I couldn't turn on the light.
How else would you read Cujo?
Yeah, how else? Yes.
Wasn't the light switch behind the curtain?
It was behind the curtain. Yes.
Yeah. So they had to open the curtain to find the switch.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of work for that Disney
Oh.
employee.
Very hard to find.
Yeah, very, very hard to find.
For a
Yes.
12-year-old.
Especially when you're sitting down.
Especially, yes, when you can't seem to get up because you're reading about a rabid dog.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a great story to tag onto that one.
Okay.
When Disney gave me something very special for some of my troubles. And this is a story I called Being Permanently Disfigured at Disney.
Mm.
So, again, we were visiting with the cousins, and we all went to River Country. And Pam and Denise, a couple of years older than me, so they were off having fun. Myself and Steve, who was my age, my cousin that's my age, were tasked with watching the younger cousin, Scott, because the parents were all on the beach having fun doing beach stuff, and they didn't want to babysit the little baby. So there was a baby pool area of River Country. I don't know if you remember that. There was, and this is all like man-made rock formations of slides and pools. So there was a very small slide, about the size of a playground slide, but it's surrounded with rock and made out of rock to look like a rock formation. And it empties into a little pool. And that was the kiddie slide. And it was basically, if you think about a slide that goes down and dog legs left. So just down and dog left. And we're talking about maybe 8 to 10 feet of slide total. So we had to stay in the kiddie pool area because that's the only place that the youngest cousin could be. So we were trying to have fun. Steve and I were trying to have fun with this kiddie slide. So we were propelling ourselves down the slide as fast as we could. So think about how like the luge people in the Olympics are like rocking back and forth and propelling themselves down the slide. That's what we were doing. Well, I propelled myself too fast, hit the dog leg, and smashed my face into the rock, and it chipped half of my front tooth off. So I've got half of a tooth in my mouth. Walk over to the adults. Oh, let me use air quotes. The adults of the situation, who were partying on the beach while we were not being adult supervised, and said, "Hey, this just happened." There might have been a little bit of blood involved, and of course they reported it to Disney. And there's not much you can do with a broken tooth in Disney. There's not like they're not going to just pull the curtains away and flip a switch and fix my face. So I think if I remember right, I forget where we were staying, probably the campground, but I kind of demanded to my parents that the tooth fairy was going to have to do something about this. And I think the tooth fairy did. They made it right. But later I did get my tooth fixed from our dentist, and he used a new technique that they called the Star Wars technique. And he actually published an article about it because it was the first time they used lasers to cure the resin in your mouth. And it's still in there. I've had it replaced once, but only because he broke it back off when he was surprised. He's like, "This thing's still in here?" But anyways, the nice gift that I have from Disney because of this horrifying experience is a business letter from the law department of Disney that says, "Dear Mr. Robbins," and this is addressed, of course, to my father, not me. "Dear Mr. Robbins, our lawyers have looked at your complaint, and we're good to go. We're not in the wrong. Our lawyers have determined that we're all fine. So have a nice day." So I have that letter. I don't have a Mickey Mouse statue, but I do have a letter from Disney's lawyer saying,
It's your fault.
our lawyer department's a little bit bigger than yours, so we're going to be fine.
Wow.
Never heard that. No.
All right. Alicia. So when we were listening to Pam's story, I think you and I were both thinking about 1994.
Yeah.
How we met in the campground. And we had, I think, basically met like weeks before that.
In 1 month.
1 month before that, okay. And you lived in South Florida, like Coral Springs area. I was living in Gainesville, going to college. And we were going to both meet at the campground. And you knew ahead of time that you were going to the campground. So if you decided you weren't going to propose to me that weekend because you knew we were going to be camping with my parents. But I drove from Gainesville. You drove from Coral Springs. It's not quite flying from London, but it was a nice little trek to get there. And I think we had a minivan, a tent, and a pop-up to accommodate all of us, because Pam and Steve were visiting also. And we spent, basically our first real date weekend together with my parents, and you were sleeping in in the pop-up with I think mom and Pam.
We met on a blind date pretty much. From my best friend introduced us like a month before, but we only spent that weekend together, and then we didn't see each other until the Disney trip. And I hadn't met anyone, so I was pretty nervous. And then I slept in the pop-up with them, and it was pretty fun. But I also had just turned 21, so I had my first legal beer at the campground, so it was exciting.
Yeah, we went over to the Wilderness Lodge.
Yeah. Not your first beer?
Probably not.
We took the bus over to the Wilderness Lodge, which was a nice little bar, had a nice little bar that we're not just going to go down to the camp store and get a Bud Light or something. We actually had
sit by the lake.
A nice draft beer. I don't remember what you got. Probably Ice House back then.
It was probably, it was just a probably Miller Lite or something. But so a pretty cute story. We were walking in Magic Kingdom, and we got really hot one day. Part of the day we got really hot. We were in the what's it called?
Country Bear
Jamboree. Yep. And we were sitting down on the floor, and we are kind of cuddling, and this older couple said, "Oh, can I take your picture? I've been seeing you all day."
So it was so cute. We had a little point and shoot, handed it to them, and they took a picture, and that was one of our favorite pictures. I don't know where it is now, but
I know where it is.
Oh, okay.
But that was such a great trip because it was like our first time being together after we initially met. So it was a really fun trip.
And I'm going to tag a story onto that one. Same day, same trip, same Magic Kingdom experience. This is when Alicia's finding out how Disney crazy our family is. And she's about to find out how crazy her new boyfriend is. So as we're walking around all day long, I'm bragging about this amazing clam chowder. Like, for dinner, we're getting clam chowder. Because the food at Disney, if you're on a budget like we were as 20-year-olds, you get a $13 burger and be very dissatisfied about it. But I'm telling her, hey, don't worry. Dinner is going to be awesome. We're going to get this clam chowder. They serve it in a bread bowl. And it's amazing. And it's like $7. It's like the best secret in the whole park. So all day long, we're waiting on that. So dinner comes around. We walk over to the Columbia Harbor House in Liberty Square. And I thought this was the best kept secret. And we get in there, stand in line. There's like 2 people in front of us, and it's a quick service. Get up and say, I'd like the clam chowder in a bread bowl. And the person says, oh, I'm sorry. The person in front of you just got the last bread bowl. We can sell you the clam chowder, but it will be in a paper bowl. And I was upset, not only because I wasn't going to get a bread bowl, but I've been hyping it up this whole day, right? and now I'm about to fall flat on my face without a bread bowl. So we get our stupid plastic or paper bowl, soup, and we go sit down, and we have a good time. We're having a good time. We're throwing ice at each other and doing stupid things that brand new boyfriend girlfriends do. And the whole time I'm tracking this dude that bought the last bread bowl.
Oh my God.
Like, he is 2 tables over, and he eats the clam chowder and doesn't even touch the bowl. Now, for whatever reason, you got the serving tray that the stuff comes on, and you've got the little trash receptacle that you're supposed to go and you throw the stuff into the trash. You put the tray on top. He walks out. He puts the tray on top, doesn't empty the tray into the trash. So there is bread bowl. Do we know what's about to happen?
Great.
Because Alicia didn't know what was about to happen. I told Alicia, dude didn't throw out his bread bowl. He didn't even eat it. I'm going to get it. And I think she was a little scared at that point. Maybe she thought I was joking. I was not playing. I went and retrieved that bread bowl, brought it back to our table, and had my darn bread bowl.
From the trash.
Now, you can't hear my wife shaking her head right now, but she is still, I think, traumatized and amazed at my actions that day.
Now it's just all normal.
Now you wouldn't expect anything different.
No.
It's just a Tuesday, right?
Our nice romantic day, and then he tops it off with eating a stranger's germ-infested bread bowl.
Was it tasty?
It was everything I remembered. I probably offered some to you. I doubt you had any.
Yes.
Alicia, I want to thank you for, after all of that, still saying yes when he proposed. I'm not sure I would have.
All right, so we haven't heard from the kids yet. Let's start with Amber. You got a story for us?
Yeah, I guess it's more of a vibe, I guess. We're in the era now where there are park vloggers and bloggers and everyone. You know, there's people on TikTok and YouTube doing their pin hunting, pin trading, and all that stuff. And one thing that's really big is Disney bounding, which is dressing up like a character, but not in a costume, because adults can't wear costumes. They'll get kicked out. Can't be confused as an employee, as a cast member. So on our most recent trip to the parks, you know, finally old enough to buy my own clothes. I have to buy all my own clothes. But one of my favorite parts about this trip was actually planning and picking out what outfits I was going to wear to which park. And you were nice enough to make us some shirts on the with the cricket. And I was like, okay, I've got this Tower of Terror shirt. I'll wear that when we go to Hollywood Studios. You know, I'll wear this other shirt when we go to Magic Kingdom, blah, blah, blah. But I actually Disney bounded for the first and only time, and it was really fun. I went to Hollywood Studios, and in the Toy Story Land, I was dressed as Bo Peep. And it was really cute. Took some pictures with Bo Peep. And not the real Bo Peep. They didn't have her, but they did have pictures of her everywhere. And it was really fun. Something that I would love to do again when we go the next time.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
See all the fun things you can do when you buy your own clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a privilege.
And buying custom Mickey ears, because they don't make Tower of Terror Mickey ears.
You
I
made
had
it
to buy one from Etsy.
You made it sound like it was a privilege to buy your own clothes when really your dad's just cheap.
Amber, I'd like you to send us some pictures of that, so we can see you with Bo Peep.
I mean, well, I wore like a blue shirt, blue pants, and tied a little scarf around my waist because
yeah,
it
was cute.
It's Florida in the middle of summer, so I'm not gonna do the whole long pants thing that she does, but yeah.
All right, Danny, how about you?
Well, every year it's a privilege that I get to buy my own clothes now. So
You're welcome.
I didn't know how to start my story, Danny. Shut up. You do have a lot of clothes, a lot more than me.
I have a lot of clothes. So every year I go through my bins trying to downsize. And I go through my t-shirt bin and I'm like going through them, getting rid of some, and I come across this white t-shirt that is 4 times smaller than all my other shirts. And I'm like, what is this? Why is this still here? So I pull it out and I'm like, oh, that's why it's still here. So I don't remember much from when we were little and going to Disney. But I do remember one memory where they had like a little t-shirt making thing at Disney. And so they had like stencils and markers. So I drew a little Winnie the Pooh and Piglet on a white t-shirt. And I wrote Disney Trip 2013. So that's my little memory. I still have it. And I have a picture, which podcast people can't see, but that's little me with my Winnie the Pooh t-shirt.
And
You
you
can send it to me. I
And
can post it on the Instagram.
you were an artist way back then. That's great because one of
Yep.
our favorite stories of later years is you drawing Dumbo for your
Oh,
grandfather's
yes.
birthday and your
Mhm.
father planning that whole event, which was
Quite a surprise for me on my birthday.
one of the best things ever, best birthdays ever.
Mhm.
Now, he arranged for me to be taken around to all the campsites in a golf cart to reminisce about all these. Because we started probably in the late 70s camping there. And then this was in the 2000s.
Mhm.
2000s. But yes, very nice gesture, Chris.
That was
Yeah, that was
super special.
that really was. I got it right off the bus, and they were waiting right there. Said
Big
Larry,
surprise.
and that was very nice.
So we've made many very happy memories there, and true typical mother fashion, I'm crying.
Yeah. A lot of years, a lot of fun.
That's for sure. Now, with that, does anybody else have any other stories before I get to one final story? All right, so this last story is one that I call Learning How to Be a Good Son from My Father. So we had gone back to Disney on some trip, and this was, I don't know, I was probably 10 years old or so. And I remember, I think our grandparents came with us into the Magic Kingdom. So we had the whole family there. We're going around riding rides, having a good time. And in the Magic Kingdom back then, there was a couple staples that you just had to go and ride, right? There was Space Mountain, if you like roller coasters. There was the Haunted Mansion. That's a favorite for everybody. And of course, there was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. So we had worked our way around the park, and we had found ourselves to the Pirates of the Caribbean. And if you remember how that queue works, you kind of start out at the street at the little bazaar, and then you go through some dark tunnels, some like caves type stuff. Then you work your way around to, you see some cannons and stuff, and you work your way all the way down to the water. Well, we were there, and we were in the line, and there's plenty of people there, so, the line wasn't moving super fast. And we got about halfway down the line into kind of the dark cavern areas. And as we're waiting in line, I noticed that there was some kind of commotion going on in our family. And as it turns out, this is the day that I learned that perhaps my grandfather, and this is my father's father, suffered from claustrophobia. And as a 10-year-old, I don't even know if I knew what claustrophobia was and wasn't sure what was going on. All I knew was that he wasn't having a good time down in those caves, and he kind of wanted to get out of that ride. So there was an emergency exit kind of right there that popped you out onto the out back into the outside. And my father had taken his father outside, and I'm realizing now, hey, Dad's not going to get to ride the Pirates of the Caribbean, and this is a ride that everybody wants to ride. So I didn't really process that as a 10-year-old. Like, all I know is, hey, Dad's not here anymore. He's not going to get to ride the ride. It's not like we were going to finish the ride and then jump back in line with him so he could ride it. He's just, going to go outside with Dad, and he was going to miss out. And I realized, as I got older, how much of a sacrifice that was because, Dad's just like me. He loves Disney. He loves those rides. And the bigger thing is I know as a father, if you're going to spend that much money on all the tickets for all the family and you don't get to ride one of the best rides, that's not a good financial decision. But that's when I realized, that he was making a sacrifice of his own fun and enjoyment to, take care of his dad. And that's really stuck with me all these years.
You remember that, Larry?
Tell you the truth, I don't.
Just another day for heroes.
That's what heroes do.
He did a lot of things for his father.
I did a lot for Dad and Mother, too.
Yeah, I'm glad that made a big impression on you, Chris.
Yes.
Because you were one of the best fathers I know. And for this to be the day before Father's Day, I
Yes.
think you're sharing that story with us.
Now, I think the irony of this whole situation is if I had to put myself in Dad's shoes, I'm not sure if I would have been popping out of the ride with him.
All that, and that's the punchline.
The moral of the story. He takes a ride.
Well, it's a shame now, Chris, that this last trip we took, your father wasn't able to walk that far to get to the ride, so you could have gone with him. But I'm not even sure whether you would have got on the ride now. But it was a pretty easy ride. It wasn't a
Mr. Toad's
Thunder. It wasn't a Thunder Mountain
I
ride,
like
and that's
Mr.
another
Toad's
story.
Wild Ride. I think that was my
I think we should all tell our worst Disney experiences, and that was my Thunder Mountain, and you all know that, so I won't go into it.
Yeah, I think we convinced my mom that Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is just a nice little easy ride.
We may have even said that it was just like the railroad.
Yeah, you love the railroad and you love riding that thing, so this is just like that.
Yeah, that's
I page back. Ride made me so sick. We had to leave the park, so you didn't get to be in the park.
All right, well, I hope everybody had a good time with this episode.
Yes.
Very good.
And I want to refer all the thousands of people that listen to this that they just did an episode a couple weeks ago about the other amusement parks that they saw on that trip. And I was doing what?
Ironing.
And I listened to 2 episodes, and that was one of them, was your podcast about the other parks. We won't mention their name. We won't.
Yes.
Well, I don't think Busch Gardens or SeaWorld have any rules against proposing on their property.
Oh, okay.
I remember that
Yeah.
for my next wife.
Keep that in mind.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode, this special 150th anniversary episode of the Family Geekery podcast. And I thank all of my family for coming on this podcast with me to share these stories. It was a lot of fun. Be sure to check out some of the other episodes on this podcast about Disney if you're a big Disney fan like us. We've sprinkled a couple in there over the last 150 episodes. So now's the time to figure out if the rest of the family knows how to end this podcast by saying, thank you as always for listening, and until next time, peace out.
Peace out and geek
Geek
out.
out.
Geek out.
Geek out.
Try to edit all those together.
Thank you for listening to the Family Geekery podcast. For more information, visit www.familygeekery.com. Don't forget to subscribe at your favorite podcast provider. And until next time, peace out and geek out.